The story goes back to 1989. We have 3 children, 2 of which had serious asthma problems, life-threatening asthma type situation. And we lived in the Philadelphia area. So as a parent, I was at work one day, and I received a telephone call that we all dread, and it was from the school. There was an emergency with the youngest kid, and I was asked to go to a particular hospital just because that's where they were transporting him. And it was a hospital near where we lived, and I was very familiar with it. We'd been to the emergency room many times, and the doctor on call was a doctor who had treated my son before, and he said to me, "Mom, you can't stay." I was just shocked, and I knew I was in a bad situation. I was in the waiting room where there's nobody else there, just this group, just yourself and your family. And I sat in a corner, and I prayed for 2 hours. And the prayer that I made was, "Dear God, don't let my son die. Please don't let my son die." I did that prayer for about, as I said, for about 2 hours, and suddenly I remembered how selfish I was being, and that all of my children were gifts from God. They weren't guaranteed to be with me forever. So I apologized to God, and I made a promise. I asked God to give me strength for whatever the outcome would be in that particular situation. And that the promise that I made to God was that one day I would give back. I did not know what I would do, but I would give back, and I told God that it's not going to be in the immediate future. So it's not going to happen today, tomorrow. And when I tell people the story, I've been asked, how do you know God was listening? And my response is always the same. He allowed me to continue to talk about what I would do in the future. I promised that I would pay it back. So let's move forward to 2009. My husband was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease, which was a shock. At that moment in time, I knew that our lives had changed forever. So like so many other people, I was familiar with Alzheimer's disease, but didn't know how it would impact lives. We struggled. I was very angry because even at the point of diagnosis, I knew that our lives would change forever. I eventually stopped work to take care of my husband. And while I was home taking care of my husband, I was informed about the Stress Busters program. So I enrolled in the Stress Busters program, which is really interesting. It's a good program. It's an excellent program. My background is in adult education, adult training through the human resources area. So I would go to the Stress Busters program, and after the sessions ended, I would drive to another location, parking lot, and I would sit in my car and I would write down notes of how that session could have been improved from my adult education training. So after the 4th session, while I'm sitting in the parking lot, I realized that this was my mission. This was my payback that I had promised God that I would do. So I became very focused on the Stress Busters program. I enjoyed the program. I did the 9 weeks. And the next question is, well, after the 9 weeks, what did you do? Nothing. I did nothing. Because this was God's mission for me. So I didn't have to do anything. It would come to me. So I finished the program in April. And in August, the group that had sponsored the Stress Busters program did a shout out for people who wanted to or were interested in becoming facilitators. And I called and I said, I am very interested. And their response was, we were hoping you would call. We were hoping you would call. So that is how I became involved in Alzheimer's education. I do what I do because I remember how lost I was when we got the diagnosis for Alzheimer's disease. I was in denial. My husband did all of the research about Alzheimer's disease, what was going to happen, how that was going to impact us, and what we needed to do. And after he finished his research, he asked me to sit down and have a conversation about his care. And I said, no, I don't think so. I'm not ready for this. So he insisted, and I went, oh, okay, let's go ahead and let's do this. And while we had this conversation, he explained to me the horror of the disease and what he wanted me to do in terms of his care. And one of the things that he asked me to do was, he couched it in words like this: I trust you to be the caregiver for me, and I know that you will always do the right thing in terms of my caregiving. So what I want you to do is, when the time is right, and I trust you to know when the time is right, to find a facility for me. Because you cannot take care of me by yourself by the time the kids were all gone. We have no family here in Texas at the time. And he insisted that I promise him. We'd been married for a long time, and he knew that in my family, when we made a promise, it was a done deal. So our conversation was, you have to promise to do this. You have to promise, and I kept saying, no, I cannot put you in a facility. No, that's just not the way we do things. And at the end of the conversation, I said, fine, that's what you want, we'll do it. At the time, I had no idea, did not realize that he had given me a gift. He had given me such an awesome gift in terms of caregiving and trust and making the right decision for him. So that's a long way of answering your question. So I went about trying to find out all I could about Alzheimer's, helping people, because nobody has to be lost when you have that diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. But unfortunately, we feel lost. It's as if I'm the only person this has ever happened to. And when the shock wears off, you don't know what to do, literally. And I've been doing this Alzheimer's education for several years now, maybe 5 or 6 years at this time. And I know of only 2 people who called the Alzheimer's Association. One called for an appointment, and one was a show up. And the rest of us, it takes us months to even realize that the Alzheimer's Association is out there. So I'm a spokesperson. I tell people about the Alzheimer's Association. I tell people about support groups. And if you're in desperate need, I will go to the trunk of my car and give you some information about Alzheimer's disease. I have it with me at all times. So that's me. That's what I do. And I did volunteer work for a group, did Alzheimer's education and stress busters program, and the people would ask me, well, who are you? You know, I didn't have any business cards. I write my name on the board because nobody can remember how to spell it, let alone pronounce it. And somebody asked, well, exactly what do you do? I said, oh, I'm a professional volunteer. And that means I don't get paid. And the group that I was working with, when I finished that program, gave me business cards that said professional volunteer. So I have business cards now that say professional volunteer. I have plenty. Would you like some?
Yes.
So that's what I do.